am one of those people that are uniquely able to speak to why Florida Memorial is so important.
When we rebirthed football, that's when it really began to take fire. When we said that we were going to start playing football in fall of 2020, things started to happen.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go! Yeah, I was building on the...
It's an honor to be here on campus with you guys. The Super Bowl down here in Miami.
Super Bowl weekend, man. We out here.
Your dreams are talking one shot for the kill. The breeze come freeze up, straight dropping the kills. I'm talking taking over pieces and shares of all.
And all the men you see here today are here for one reason, and one reason only. And that's because they love you.
I'm turning dreams into reality. In the lab with the formula and chemistry. Your memories spark and motivate and make the industry shake. We put the balls in the place. I'm talking one chance at best.
Stay true to who you are, stay true to what you believe in, and stay dedicated to what you're chasing.
You never rest. Freedom is a teacher under pressure, now we blessed.
That's what we're all about here. We're about educating, we're about teaching, we're about making people better.
Yeah. It's one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
I mean, I'm learning a lot about little things, but you got to do all of this stuff to produce. I'm only imagining when you do your shows and just all the different things that go into what we see.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU Sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
They can follow their dreams.
Welcome to Knights of the Round Table, HBCU Pro Sports Media Association presentation. You know, today we decided to supersize our show today and go 5 wide on you today. So I'm gonna see, well, I don't know what order you're looking at them on your screen, but I'm gonna start with the man to my left, Mr. Harold Michael Harvey. Mr. Harvey, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you, AD?
I am doing fine. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at out there in the Twitterverse?
In Twitterverse at H Michael Harvey, and of course you can also read my writings at Black College 9, and I'm a new member of the HBCU Sports, HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. I'm very proud to be a new member of this wonderful organization.
So you're the freshman in the group, so that means you're gonna carry our bags after the show, right?
You got it.
You didn't know that part.
You do, big brother.
And since we got the freshman, we're gonna go to our senior member of the organization, Mr. Eric Moore from OwnerDan.com.
I'm just old, that's all. Yes, my name is Eric Moore. I'm sometimes called the Guru, sometimes called other things that I haven't heard yet. And I'm the founding, I guess, creator of a website called OwnerDan.com. It's spelled ONNIDAN.com. It comes from my mother and father's first names, following the biblical scripture of honor thy mother and father. And so far, I've got to, my days have been long enough that I'm still here. I got a chance to make this appearance with you gentlemen as a knight at the round table.
Well, we appreciate you for joining us, and I'm gonna say my partner in crime for last. So first time on the show, also from HBCU Sports.com, Mr. Kenn Rashad. He always breaking some story somewhere about something going on. What's going on, my brother?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show for a first time.
All right. You got anything you want to break down? You want to save it for a little bit later on in the show?
Nah, nothing to break right now.
All right.
But hey, if something comes, I'll let you know though. I sure will.
All right. So y'all keep in mind, if he picks up his phone or if he disappears off screen, he's gonna break that story right here on Nights of the Round Table. There you go. That's what I'm talking about, my brother. And my sports rap partner in crime, along with a partner in crime and a few other things we won't mention to people on the air, Mr. Bryan Fulford.
Hey now, slow down, Drew. Good to be on with you. I always say, I already we've learned something. Did not know. As long as I've been reading OwnerDan.com, I did not know, Mr. Moore. That is how the name of the site came to be. So I've learned something new already. I can shut it down. I can go home now. I've learned something new already.
You mean it's not OwnerDan?
Don't start, Ken. That name has been butchered so many times. I just let them say it and then keep on walking, because I've heard OwnerDan, OmniDan, all kinds of Dans. But as long as the check clears, I'm fine.
That's right. Yeah, follow me at DRB365, and of course, part of the Black College Sports Network at my BCSN1, the number one. That's where you can find the BCSN Sports Wrap, myself and Drew.
Yeah, all that stuff is ditto for me. I'm not gonna give it again, except I'm gonna just change the Twitter handle at BCSN Drew, at BCSN DREW. We're gonna change up the format just a little bit today. We're not gonna cover our typical 9 topics in the traditional sense that we have been covering it. We're gonna go a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we have going on in the HBCU and professional sports universe. Let's start off with probably the biggest news in the professional universe around HBCU sports. The Basketball Hall of Fame. We got 2 in. We can't get 2 drafted in any sport, but when they do get to the league, we can make sure we get a couple of them into the Hall of Fame. Both of them CIAA roots. Ben Wallace, Virginia Union, Bob Dandridge, Norfolk State, which for those of y'all who may be under 30, Norfolk State used to be in the CIAA, longtime member of the CIAA. So, fellas, let's just start off with first reaction to the announcement that these 2 HBCU alums were made it into the Hall of Fame. Let's start off with you, Mr. Moore.
Well, obviously, we were all proud of the fact that they were both inducted, and unfortunately, I'm old enough that I remember watching them play. Bobby Dandridge was, and that's what we called him, was Bobby, although his official name, I guess, as they said, the government check sheet says his name was Bob. But Dandridge brought a special flavor. He could score the basketball, go up and down the court very quickly. And of course, Ben Wallace was, as I was telling, I think I was talking to my daughter earlier, he was ahead of Dennis Rodman. People say, oh, Dennis will get the rebound. Well, chances are that Ben Wallace got it first if Dennis was in the game. But the fact that both of them made it on different categories, one is an offensive player and one is a defensive player, I think it's just a tribute to the quality of players that were available back during those times, and we know why they didn't play at other schools. But a sense of pride in there, especially after we got shut out for the NFL.
Ken.
Well, I can't say that I'm old enough to know or to know much about Bob Dandridge, but I'm very familiar with Ben Wallace. And I guess Ben Wallace probably represents everything that old school basketball as we once knew it. He was the true representation of what that old school mentality was. Ben Wallace was an enforcer, a defensive presence. And, you know, outside of blocking your shot every once in a while, he was the type that, you know, you can get upset about it, but I doubt there was going to be much that you actually wanted to do about it because he wasn't going to take any mess either. So Ben Wallace is a no-brainer and obviously deserving of it. And like I said, kind of represents the old school mentality, you know, the NBA basketball that I am aware of. Coming up during my time in, you know, the 80s and early 90s.
Michael.
Well, you know, there are two fine choices. And for me, Bob Dandridge is sort of like a contemporary. I just recall that when Bob made it to the league, I was just so proud to know that someone from Norfolk State had made it to the league. And so I followed his career because he was from Norfolk State and he was a good ball player. And so he filled me with a lot of pride knowing that an athlete from an HBCU could go into the league and do well. And of course, you know, Wallace, I find Wallace, I'm a little seasoned, probably middle-aged man by the time Wallace comes on the scene, but I was proud of the way he went about his work too. He was a hard-nosed player, and as Ken said, I mean, he could be a nice guy, but he was such a mean basketball player that you didn't want to get in his way. And as Ken said, you didn't want to have very much to say about it. He accidentally got in his way, and he gave you that look. But I was very proud of both of those ball players, knowing where they came from. They just it filled me with a lot of pride, and they're both well deserving to be in the Hall, and I'm glad that they made it.
And then let me correct myself. I said 80s, early 90s. I meant 90s, early 2000s. So
yeah, I would have been a middle-aged man by then.
Yeah, you're still middle-aged, so it didn't matter.
I reached my seventh decade in a few months.
The very cool thing, I will admit, is a little personal connection to both of these. My parents were at Norfolk State with Bob Dandridge. Actually, more so, he's more of a contemporary of my mother. My mother took classes with Bob. I was just talking to my dad about this earlier. My dad was on the other side of the campus at the engineering area on the other side of campus. But yeah, I mean, he's more of a contemporary with my mother. So they had classes together. My dad, very familiar, knows who Bob is and has followed his career and you know, as Norfolk State College, let it be known, NSC, as it was known when they were on the yard. So very familiar with him there. And then the funny thing about Ben Wallace, you know, in his fourth season, he was a part of, which I'm living in the Orlando area. He was part of this mythical, probably still considered one of the great Magic teams that never made the playoffs, called the Orlando Magic, the Heart and Hustle team. This is Doc Rivers. This is the team that somehow Doc Rivers got on the map as being a great coach because of what he did with this team in the 99-2000 season, which consisted of guys like a group of no names that went 41-41, I believe. They finished 500 and just missed the playoffs. Nobody expected this team to do anything, but Ben Wallace was a part of that group along with some other guys. There were no stars on that team.
Darryl Armstrong on that team.
Darryl Armstrong, Bo Outlaw. I mean, guys who are still running around Orlando doing great things in the community, but trust me, they are living off what they did with that heart and hustle team. It really was heart and hustle. And just so happened that part of the Ben Wallace was part of that. He was the epitome of heart and hustle, along with Darryl Armstrong and some of those other guys. So, I mean, a great group, and they were fun games to watch. One of the biggest mistakes the Magic ever made was letting him get out of Orlando and go to Detroit. Of course, we all know the rest is history once he got to Detroit, and that's where he cemented himself as a Hall of Famer, became a defensive 4 or 5-time defensive player of the year, 6-time defensive, all defensive team, 4-time defensive player of the year, all that good stuff, 5-time all NBA, became a Hall of Famer in Detroit. But it all started as part of the heart and hustle in Orlando. So it's great to kind of see the connection. And then, of course, the fact that there's the CIAA ties is also very cool as well.
You know, what I find interesting about it is probably until now, he may not have even been considered one of the greatest basketball players from Virginia Union. You know, everybody was always Charles Oakley was the best player that had came out of Virginia Union. And we all know Charles Oakley has not even really had a good whiff of making it to the Hall of Fame. So for Ben Wallace to get there, you know, and Brian, you and I were talking about this, he was never even Conference Player of the Year while he was in the CIAA. There's another guy, I think he's coaching now at one of these other HBCUs. What's his name again, Brian?
Yeah, a great Twitter feed by Coach Lavelle Moten. I mean, anybody who's not following Coach Moten, I saw his tweets. I mean, obviously he knows. I mean, obviously he has great connections with the class of 2000 that went into the Hall of Fame. But then for him to recollect his stories of going to workout camps, coming out the same time with Wallace. And, you know, it was Moten who was the player of the year, if I'm not mistaken, right, in the CIAA that last year. And so he's a good follow, but it's, you know, it just goes to show sometimes it doesn't always work out as you might think. God's plan, right?
Yeah, God's plan. You know, both of them have had successes in. Obviously, Lavelle Moten as a coach and Ben Wallace as a professional athlete. I believe he got 16 years in, if I remember correctly, was the number. Somewhere there around there for Ben Wallace. But not Ben Wallace, as I'll never do a great job getting to the Hall of Fame. But when you take a look at this whole entire class from Chris Bosh to Chris Webber, you know, Bobby Dandridge and some of the other ones who got in, were they the benefit of the list of nominees not having a real big superstar name on the list? Because let's be real, if they would have went up against this current class that just got in with Kobe and Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce just got in also. Let's be real, they wouldn't have gotten in. And I'm gonna just read down the name of some of the people that were on this list. You've got Kenny Anderson, Chauncey Billups, Bugsy Bogues. Okay, you take that for what it is. Michael Cooper, Dale Ellis, Michael Finley, Rip Hamilton, Tim Hardaway, Mark Jackson, Marcus Johnson. Like I say, these were some of the bigger names that were on the list. Buck Williams is another big name. So I just threw a few of the names that did not get in, fellas. Let's have the honest discussion. Were they the benefit of a down year of candidates on the list, or were they just their time? It was just their time that they were due. Ken, I'll start with you.
Well, you mentioned some of the names on that list: Buck Williams, Marcus Johnson, I even say, Michael Cooper, I guess, are names of individuals that you can make arguments for. Michael Cooper, I think, in the sense of when he played and who he played for, brings somewhat of a bit of a nostalgia, given the type of player that he was with the Showtime Lakers. But Michael Cooper was always known as the defensive presence that to that offensive firepower that the Lake Show or the Lakers were known for. Marcus Johnson was pretty solid in his own right. I just think that in his case, it may be an issue of longevity. Who was it? Buck Williams?
Yeah, Buck Williams is another name.
Buck Williams is another one that I think that you can make a case for. But I think ultimately, I don't want to say that it's all about sizzle, but I think that there is something to be said about, the lack of sizzle, if you will. And just maybe people not necessarily being familiar with it. It just depends on what the individual is looking for. When you speak of Hall of Famer, what does that mean? And I think that varies from individual to individual. For me, there's a part that says that a Hall of Famer is a person that in his own right kind of ascended and kind of during the time that he played was ascended above everyone else to some degree. Doesn't necessarily have to be an overall game. We know that isn't necessarily the case. Some are known for their defensive prowess. Some are known for being shot blockers and so forth. But I think there is something to be said for having sizzle or a lack thereof that makes it person, to either get that nod or not.
Yeah, and you mentioned Michael Cooper. I know watching them come on about 10:30 locally. I always just try to stay up long enough to see the Cooper Loop.
right.
if you remember that. And speaking of Michael Cooper, I mean, he played three positions. He was Magic Johnson's backup at the point guard and was the epitome of a spot up shooter before anybody ever knew what a spot up shooter was. So, right. Bryan, I'm gonna come back to you next.
Well, look, the 2020 class is arguably one of the greatest basketball Hall of Fame classes. I'm looking at a list of what some other people might challenge with. I mean, when you look at Kobe, Garnett, and Tim Duncan, along with Tamika Catchings. Now you compare that to, 2009, when you had Jordan, Stockton, and Robinson, or 2016 when you had Shaq, Iverson, Yao Ming. Zelmo Beatty happened to even be a part of that 2016 group. This is one of the ones that'll be debated. So for any of the guys getting in and after that, I mean, there's a big relief. Like, woo, we didn't have to go in with that group of 2020, so that we. I mean, look, first off, you're having to deal with the posthumously of timing of Kobe, but then just that whole group. I mean, there's a little sense of, hey, it'd been great, I'm sure, to go in with Kobe's class, but then there's probably a lot of relief that, woo, I'm not in that group. But how about, I think what's interesting is Ben Wallace getting in and Chauncey Billups, who many people consider to be the glue. I mean, if there was, that team really didn't have a star, but the guy who was the finals MVP, I believe, was Chauncey Billups. Chauncey Billups still has not gotten into the Basketball Hall of Fame. So, and it's interesting to see a guy, Ben Wallace, of defensive presence with low scoring averages, to see him get in. It just kind of opens the door maybe for guys like Robert Horry and other guys. So, I mean, it is interesting. No shade and all props to Ben Wallace, but I think it just opens up the door for a lot of discussion. And that's what this kind of stuff ends up being for basketball fans, is fun. But I always say, if you have to even hesitate to think about whether a guy is a Hall of Fame or not, I tend to say he's not, if you have to even hesitate and pause. That's just my 2 cents.
Great point.
And if Chauncey Billups was the glue, Rip Hamilton was the heart of that team, who was also on this list, Richard Hamilton. Mr. Moore, Eric Moore.
As I listen and reflect on the different perspectives of the different gentlemen on the crew, one of the things that has, I guess, hit me when somebody said, well, what happened to all the HBCU football, including Deion Sanders? Why can't they get drafted? Well, if you look at the year 2020, and I know how many of these classes operate. There's a certain group played a certain time, and for things to go haywire like they did with the pandemic, and the fact that we now have, I think somebody mentioned earlier, we were off camera, racial reckoning. I think the fact that a small school player, and they're good for calling Virginia Union a small school, and yet it may have more students than Wake Forest, but that's a whole other story. We find, I will never worry about what my feelings are versus someone else who they pick based upon whatever their criteria was. I'm happy he got in, and let's move on to the next season.
Yeah, and one thing that should be noted about Ben Wallace, the first, I believe they say he was the first non-drafted player to ever make the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. So haven't been able to confirm that, but that's something that I've seen out there in a couple of different media reports. Mr. Harvey.
Well, Hall of Fame induction classes is your competition is who else is available during the year that you are available for induction. And when I look at the class, there are some good basketball players on that list. You got Mark Jackson, that's Hall of Famer.
Sir,
I wouldn't pause to think about it. He's a Hall of Famer, and if he doesn't get in as a player, he should get in as an announcer. And he was a good coach. In fact, this run that the team out of San Francisco has had in the past few years, that's the team that he built. And they just displaced him at the time when the team had reached its peak. But he was very good as a coach, very good as a player. So I think that was a strong class. Okay. And when you look at going back to playing off of Kenn's comment, when you look at Wallace and Dandridge, in the time period that they played, they were dominating players. Dandridge was right there in the mix with the guys in the league when he was in the league. He was right there with them, with the elite players. So was Wallace. Maybe like in a quieter place, you had a number of outstanding players in that era, but he stood out. The way he played on that court, he stood out. Dandridge, as I recall, stood out in his era. So, I don't think they backdoored it because the candidates weren't that strong this year. Arguably, the 2020 class that went in this weekend, that's a tremendous class. That is a tremendous class. And every induction class is not that strong. We have to keep that in mind. Every induction class is not that strong, but that was an exceptionally strong class. And I think the fact that Wallace and Dandridge made it, I think that they did stand out above their peers. And there are some good people who were eligible for induction this year who didn't get in. And who knows, maybe they will down the road, and we'll reevaluate at that point in time how strong the 2021 class really was.
I got a question for Drew, if I could ask, and maybe Ken and Mr. Moore might want to quickly add in. Will we see anyone? Is Ben Wallace, is Bob Dandridge, is that the last? And I hate to say it this way, but maybe if you think about how college basketball has changed, I mean, could they possibly be the last for the next 20 years? I mean, where we don't see HBCU players getting into the NBA as frequently as they were, and Ben Wallace being an undrafted guy is really where, definitely was less. I mean, could it be another couple of decades before we see another HBCU guy get into the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame?
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going through my mind right now, trying to figure out who else may have been somewhat of an impactful player who would be worthy of Hall of Fame consideration. And, out of respect for who I might be missing, there isn't anyone that just jumps out. I can't think of anyone that just
because
comes
the
to
fight
mind
isn't over
I would
yet.
automatically
We'll
come
see.
Had some kind of secret connection to the Cleveland area because some of his best players came out of that part of the country. So for him to make the impression he did in just 2 years of small college play, he had to be good. So I'm thinking for many, especially now with the transfer portal, I was having a conversation that says now with the transfer portal, college basketball and football players have basically developed free agency. And so as a result of that, you won't see a player. In fact, I guess we were watching, when we were watching the FCS championship, there was a player, I believe for Sam Houston State, who had transferred from Howard.
Where is Ezra?
Ezra, yeah, Ezra.
And the fact that, he felt like he could be seen better, whatever, at another school, players are more likely to take that option than to say, all right, I'm good, come see me, and then make your decision.
And with that being said, we are going to take our first break. But before you do, if you get a chance, speaking of Basketball Hall of Fame, you got to Google the story of Clarence Fats Jenkins. Not only did he play for the Harlem Wrens, he got in as a what they call it, Early African American Pioneers Committee nomination, but he also played in the Negro Leagues at the same time. He was playing with the Harlem Wrens. So it's a great and fascinating story. So I suggest that you Google that story and read about him. He's another one of these people who were nominated in this class. This is Knights of the Round Table, HBCU Pro Sports Media presentation. We'll be right back after these messages.
Because the fight isn't over yet.
You will see me choose to protect my community by wearing a face covering.
And even with my face covered,
You will see me.
As a son.
As a man with a never quit attitude.
As a fighter for change.
Join me in wearing a face cover.
To help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because this is one small act of kindness
that has the power to make a big difference.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
This is Bryan Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
We're back on Knights of the Round Table, HBCU Pro Sports Media presentation. Supersized today, Michael Harvey, Eric Moore, Bryan Fulford, Kenn Rashad, and of course myself, AD Drew. Our next topic that we want to get into is this Knight Commission report. Brought out some things that you really already knew, and some things that some things were put on paper that we kind of already knew. This article was reported by HBCU-Sports.com, our very own Kenn Rashad. So instead of me going through and trying to requote what he already wrote, I'm going to ask him to introduce this article and this topic and give us a quick summary of it.
Well, yeah, Kendrick Marshall is the person who actually wrote a summary of the interview that I did with the great Lynn Elmore and members from the co-chair of the committee that produced that report. But I think if you don't take anything else from that report, I think the one thing that should probably stick out to anyone is that we obviously know that these student athletes depending on where they come from. They come from low-income families. Many of them come from secondary education systems where those particular institutions are inadequately preparing these kids for college and so forth. When you combine that with the fact that some of these kids end up matriculating at HBCUs, and for all the wonders that HBCUs provide, when you look at this from a Division I standpoint, there's one interesting stat that I think you should put in consideration. HBCUs account for 7% of all Division I institutions. But when you look at the APR penalties that have come out, they typically make up 72% of the APR postseason penalties that are published. There's something wrong with that. So there are layers to the reasons why things are the way they are. And basically the report basically is very specific in some things that the NCAA and other entities can put together or put in place to kind of help these student athletes succeed beyond their athletic or collegiate athletic career.
Can I ask a question of Mr. Rashad?
Sure.
Wasn't there supposed to be some NCAA action to send resources to a lot of those HBCUs that did not fare well?
Yeah, in a nutshell, it was the NCAA needs to do a better job of supporting, providing support. Now, what does that mean? It varies. But in addition to the support that the NCAA should provide HBCUs, there is also the points that were made that PWIs, predominantly white institutions, need to do a better job of providing an environment that Black student athletes can be comfortable with, which will in essence put them in a situation to where they too can better succeed once they go beyond the years of their collegiate careers as well. So it's somewhat of a two-pronged approach, but ultimately it does, and this is all for the benefit of the Black student athlete, male or female.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Ken. I did get a chance to watch your interview that you did with them, and so that was well done. And so I guess one of the things that I was watching, and I'm glad you just pointed that out about the number, about 7% of Division I.
HBCUs, yeah, 7% of Division I, yeah.
7% of Division I, and I think that brings. I think one of the points that you brought up, and as I was looking at their review, and one of their 4 major points that they brought up in their report is that investing in programs that support and enhance Black athletes' college experience and promote inclusion and belonging, which, I mean, that it's funny because, for HBCUs, it's like, that's us. That's what we do. And I think you brought that home a lot about the fact that there are certain things that HBCUs provide naturally to student athletes. And it's always interesting here. And I think some of the panelists even acknowledge the fact that they
exactly right.
WIs.
Right.
And we're like, I have friends who went to HBCUs, and that connection that is just inherently there at an HBCU, we didn't have that. Right. And so, being able to close that gap is important. But I guess, so my question is, do you get the sense that the Knight Commission has the teeth to really make a difference in what's going on for the NCAA? Because a lot of things are happening for the NCAA right now. They're dealing with name, image, and likeness.
Right.
But this topic of sort of, I will say, working with Black student athletes is sitting right there in front of them after what we've seen this past year.
Well, that was a question that I asked Lynn Elmore, and I think he was pretty honest in saying that up to this point, and obviously this isn't the first time that the Knight Commission has come up. These reports come out periodically after a certain level of research, but he indicated that the NCAA has been somewhat receptive to it. Keyword, they've been receptive. Now, I guess the bigger question is that at some point going to result in action? And I think we're kind of at, again, that racial reckoning to where, given where we are right now with NIL, and that the NCAA is at a point to where they can't afford to ignore this much longer. So I do believe that something is going to become of it. But I also stress too that in addition to the NCAA, when you put in consideration where these other schools are, some are private, some are public. So obviously a lot of the responsibility is going to fall upon the state legislature, in which many of these institutions are, if they're public, and if they're private, a lot of it is just going to be based upon whether or not they feel that it's to their benefit to move forward in making these necessary changes as recommended with the Knight Commission. So I think there was something to the fact that in him saying that, yes, that individuals, the NCAA, and many of these other entities, including the college football playoffs, they are all receptive to these changes. It's just simply a matter of when.
Mr. Harvey, why don't you jump in this discussion?
Well, I have a question because I'm just not too familiar with the subject, but Ken, what are some of the recommendations?
The recommendations recently, for instance, let me see, one indicated that because of, obviously due to the pandemic, and that obviously created a huge shift in terms of how schools had to adjust in terms of how they were to teach classes. It resulted in a major shift in how, student athletes had to adjust and so forth. One of the key recommendations was that the NCAA suspend any and all APR penalties that might result in so-called low APR scores for at least the next 2 years. And during that time, possibly either reevaluate or possibly even make some additional changes to the extent that with respect to those HBCUs, the 72% of those HBCUs that tend to make up those schools that are a part of those postseason penalties, to maybe tweak something in a way to where basically the playing field is level. That was the essence of the entire report. Not necessarily for HBCUs, but just for Black student athletes in general, whether they be at HBCUs or whether they be at PWIs, that certain reforms be put in place so that they are put in the best situation to succeed after their collegiate career.
First of all, before I get into mine, shout out to Chuck Hunt, Jamie Walker, and Chris Tucker for hitting us up on Facebook. But the biggest thing, especially for somebody who's been in the midst of all this and trying to work with academic advisors, trying to keep kids eligible and things like that. First of all, these kids who are going into this portal, beware before you put your paperwork into the portal. The one thing that says, in order for you to be able to transfer to another school, you have to be academically clear at the school in which you are leaving from. That's part of the reason you're seeing some of these people go into the portal and they're stuck there. It's not because they don't have the talent, they don't have the other stuff that some of the stuff in the Knight report is bringing up. They don't have the grades or some of the other things. This is the same thing that happens when JUCO players go to a 4-year school. In case you don't know, junior college player, I don't care how many credits you come out with, 62, 64, 66, be prepared to be in the 40s by the time that school that you're going to gets done slicing and dicing your transcript. Has happened to every junior college player that I have seen, and I've been out there recruiting. It's an unfortunate thing. Some of those classes will not transfer. But when we look at a lot of our HBCUs, we've become more reliant on the portal. We've become reliant on JUCO players. So these are some of the things with these scores that affect some of those things in the Knight report. Players leaving your school. That also goes against you in that Knight report. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ken. Those are some of the things that knock you in that Knight report, your retention. Am I correct?
Right. That's correct.
So, everything that I ain't gonna say everything, but a lot is going against. And then we get back to the basic mission of HBCUs. HBCUs are supposed to be the ones that take any and everybody into your school and to help and mold you. We take students that the HWCUs will not take. Well, if you're worried about APR and graduation rates and all this stuff, we all know. I was on the 6-year plan at FAMU. I won't even lie to you. So, you know, I would have screwed up somebody's APR if I would have been playing ball at that point in time. But there are a lot of us who have been on these 6-year plans.
You were a double major.
5 3/4. It wasn't quite 6 years. I was one class from 6 years. But
you were a double major, Drew, doing internship.
I was a super senior, and I swore I was not going to be a super duper senior before I graduated. But if I would have got that one class out the way, I would have been a super duper senior before I graduated there. So I'm open the floor up, fellas.
I will always remember an interview that was done with Bobby Bowden during his, I guess you'd say, farewell tour when he announced his retirement. And he just flat out admitted when he brought recruits to town at Fayetteville State, Florida State,
yeah.
He was just casually look across the street, they're close together, and say, oh, by the way, you're right here next to FAMU. And that's all he said. With the implication being very clear that the two institutions were very close together physically.
They were only separated by a railroad track.
Yep. So even that, in terms of just flat out competing early on, so now the brother forgets that you got to go to class if you want to stay eligible. And so they spend more time out of class doing ineligible things than they do if they stayed in class.
Oh. I'm curious about the so there's a Ken, they have a virtual town hall coming up I guess next Monday, matter of fact. What are some of the things that we can anticipate or that you might anticipate coming out of that town hall?
You talking about with the night commission?
With the night commission, next Monday.
See, at this point, now that the commission is out, and we were privileged enough to get a copy of this before the actual copy was released to the public. But I think at this point, and again, I keep going back to what Lynn Elmore said, the key at this point is just simply to continue to stay consistent in getting the word out there. The key is to, I guess, create outrage, not phony outrage, but to basically make individuals aware that for all of the glitz and glamour that we see on TV week in and week out with these student athletes, you know, that once they get off the field, once they get off the basketball court or whatever sport that they play, there are real life situations that many of us just simply take for granted, you know, that these individuals have, you know, very different, you know, they have to go back to conditions that necessarily may be things that we take for granted. And that in order for them to overcome those obstacles that they face once they leave that college campus, we have to do a better job of making sure that we take care of them. That's basically the consistent thing that they're going to continue to focus on and continue to push until action is witnessed.
Do you think the night commission is interested in being that? I don't know if they are. It doesn't sound like they actually are, but I keep wondering who brings all of the student athletes together. Because when we've seen different campaigns, we've kind of seen players lead things more recently with hashtags and social media. We've seen it we've seen it in football. We've seen it in basketball, where a couple of players will of prominence will put their name out there. And I always wonder, you know, who's communicating with them? I mean, is the night commission interested or in the business or invested in wanting to speak, I don't know if I want to say speak for, but bring these student athletes together? Are they able to communicate with all of them? I mean, they seem to be interested in helping student athletes, all of them. I mean, but how do you reach so many of them? I mean, you've got thousands across all kinds of sports. I mean, how do you reach them? I don't know. I mean, I'm just asking that, or what are your thoughts on that?
I'm all on a Zoom call.
Well, I think, you know, the Knight Commission is nonprofit first and foremost. And so that a lot of the individuals who are involved with this are obviously doing this from a voluntary standpoint. And keep in mind that these individuals who are speaking, you know, Lynn Elmore and the co-chairs and individuals who contributed at some form or fashion, we either student athletes themselves or were in roles where they interacted frequently with student athletes. One of the key recommendations, and this is another one, you know, that level of support that these student athletes should get while during their years, especially at PWIs, is, you know, one of the recommendations is you need to maybe focus on hiring more minority individuals to work in these athletic, just like we have a senior women's athletic administrators to kind of work with women's issues per se. You might want to have something along those lines, the equivalent of a administrator that could address, you know, diversity issues or African-American issues or whatever the case may be, so that, you know, brown and black and brown student athletes can better adapt, better adjust, and again, be better equipped once their careers are over. So, you know, these were hardcore, I really believe, reasonable and rational recommendations. I mean, these weren't just mind-blowing, off the chart extreme recommendations. These are just things that we talk about every day. We need to see more people in key positions that look like us in order for these individuals to achieve. And again, that's going to be the one constant that we hear going forward with these town hall meetings and so forth.
Well, if the pandemic has not done anything, it has done this one thing. It forced our HBCUs to catch up with technology. And that was probably one of the things that was lacking when you have kids, especially when you talk about basketball, some of the other sports that may go on week-long or week-and-a-half-long road trips. Now, because they were forced to catch up with technology, they could actually keep up in class and not come back 3 lectures behind and try to figure out what the heck is going on and depend on somebody else's notes. Because now they can just log in during that time when they're in the hotel during the day. They can still have their class time, have their study halls on the road before they go and play their competition. So I think that maybe the pandemic has helped us with one of the key things that have kind of helped us behind, where some of the historically white universities have had those technology pieces together that we have not. But fellas, that's enough on that. We're going to take a break right here. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask y'all, of all the HBCU sports that we had playing this week, we had baseball, we had softball, we had golf, we had Division I, Division II. Who won the weekend and why? I'm gonna make you give me your answer right after we come back. You're watching Knights of the Round Table, an HBCU Pro Sports Media presentation.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Bryan, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
We're back on Knights of the Round Table, the supersized edition of Knights of the Round Table. Michael Harvey, Eric Moore, Bryan Fulford, Kenn Rashad. Fellas, got West Virginia State coming from the losers bracket to win the MEC tournament, Mountain East Conference. Got Claflin getting into the Division II playoffs with the number 6 seed. Some way, somehow, we still try to figure out how they did that, only playing, I believe it was 9 games. So those 9 games must have really counted. Alabama State defeating Alcorn State in the SWAC softball tournament. Morgan State defeating North Carolina Central in the MEAC softball tournament. Speaking of North Carolina Central overtaking FAMU on the last weekend of regular season play in the MEAC to win the MEAC. What we know is the MEAC South. Won't know it next year is the MEAC South, but what we currently know is the MEAC South. And then we got a little bit of golf going on out there. So fellas, of all those I put out there, or you may have one of your own, who won the weekend? Michael Harvey, I'm gonna start with you. Who won the weekend, in your opinion?
West Virginia, double elimination tournament. They found themselves in the losers bracket, and they played their way out of it and played in the championship game, and they won. So I'll have to go with West Virginia being the having won the weekend this weekend.
Yeah, and I had to look at the score twice when I pulled up the box scores, because they won both games by the score of 9-3. And I had to really look at it and see, was this in here twice, or did they really win both games by the same identical score? So yeah, they won the game that forced the if game 9-3, and then they won the if game 9-3.
I mean,
who won the weekend in your opinion?
In my opinion, the weekend was won by North Carolina Central's baseball team. And the reason I bring that up is because the program is going to be over when the season is over. They've already announced that they're shutting down baseball. And yet those players came out, gave it their best shot. The come from behind game we've been talking about earlier, I give them credit for hanging in there and not just giving up on themselves or on the season. So the Eagles won the weekend for Eric Moore.
Haven't we seen this story before? I think it was a school called Winston-Salem State who cut their baseball program and did something real similar.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Brian.
And the amazing thing is that both those schools had very fine baseball programs.
Yep.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah. The things that administrations do in the order of saving money and budget cuts, that's why that's above my pay grade, because I would definitely question those decisions if I was in that realm. Brian.
Well, I'm going to go off script. So yeah, exactly. I'm going to say the person that won the weekend is a young man at Southern University by the name of Jordan Lewis, who won the 2021 Stats Perform FCS Buck Buchanan Award, which is the 26th year that Stat FCS awarded or recognized the Defensive Player of the Year in FCS football. Lewis was also the FCS ADA Defensive Player of the Year and All-American in the same weekend as well. Imagine having an award named after a SWAC legend, and Lewis be the first SWAC football player to win the award named after one of your legends. So other HBCU guys have won the award. Dexter Coakley, Rashawn Mathis, Jared Allen, Arthur Moats, Kyle Manuel. But according to, and this is, I'm reading this off of Southern's page, but Southern Go Jags Sports.com, that this is the first time that a player from the conference won an individual honor. And this is an interesting year. It's a shortened season, but his numbers were ridiculous this year. Led the regular season in tackles for loss at 15, tackles for loss per game, yard at 10.5 sacks. I mean, look, they just keep showing that clip of Alabama State and Jackson State. And those two programs, I hope they send him flowers or at least some gift certificates, because those offensive lines, they helped that young man win that award with those performances. So, but no, it just, props to Jordan Lewis and Southern University for being the Buck Buchanan Award winner.
Ken.
It would have to be the Lady Bears of Morgan State. The first softball title in the program's history. You go 24-15, you win the MEAC championship, and for your efforts, what do you get? You get to face the #1 team in the nation at 45-2, the University of Oklahoma. Congratulations to the Morgan State Lady Bears.
In true NCAA fashion, hey, serve you up.
Alabama State didn't get too much of a better draw. At least they only got to travel up the road to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, but that's number 3.
University of Alabama.
Yeah, but that's number 3. You gotta be big. You gotta go big, man. #1.
Ken, you ought to be used to it. Have you looked at the basketball parents? Hey. If we don't get the play-in game, we the number 16 seed, so we ought to be used to it.
Exactly. Like I said, man, you either go big or you go home, and in this case, it may be both.
Yep.
My who won the weekend, and Bryan went off script. I'm going way off radar with this one, but Bryan, you were a part of this one. Florida Memorial with their beach volleyball tournament. That they put on this weekend, inviting players from HBCUs who are interested in beach volleyball to come down for a camp on Saturday, and then kind of how would you describe the tournament that they had on Sunday, Bryan?
I would say it's the first of what is going to become a future HBCU circuit. Because what Coach Crockett is doing at Florida Memorial is going to spread. I know she was telling me there's another HBCU. I believe Delaware State is already on board. It sounds weird to say this, but I think Delaware State or Maryland Eastern Shore, somebody in the Northeast is already on board with a beach volleyball program. You watch, in about 2 to 3 years, there's going to be about at least a dozen, and they're going to create a conference, and somebody's going to be able to compete to get into nationals. And beach volleyball is growing, and you're going to start to see you're going to see more Black and brown faces playing the sport. And she's committed to doing a circuit and traveling and exposing more people to beach volleyball. So that's going to grow. It's going to be a big thing.
I think Florida Memorial was first, though, right?
Yeah,
I think Florida Memorial has one.
First,
yeah, that's Coach Crockett. She's the head women's coach, and she doubles up as the beach volleyball coach as well. So I mean, I'm telling you, they're doing big things down there.
The American Volleyball Association has made some grants to SIAC schools to help with their men's volleyball program,
right?
And it would seem like a perfect match in terms of your seasons for beach volleyball versus men's volleyball.
That's exactly part of it.
The only thing with beach and men's volleyball, I believe they will be played both as spring semester sports.
Okay.
So the men competing on the beach volleyball, they may have to choose one or the other based in its current form, where the women will be able to play volleyball in the fall, and then they can go and play beach in the spring.
Okay.
So, but getting back to my point, between the beach volleyball and then men's volleyball coming into the SIAC and hopefully into some of the other conferences later on, it's nice to see HBCUs starting to explore non-traditional sports in order to create diversity on their campuses, because right now, probably a majority of those who are playing beach volleyball and men's volleyball are not what we consider African-American males. A lot of these are coming from the islands and other places. They are players of color, but they are not necessarily all African Americans. And if we want to talk about a sport that we should see on HBCU campuses, there's no way we shouldn't see men's soccer on a majority of our HBCU campuses, but that's a discussion for another day. What we're gonna do now, fellas, we're gonna get ready to pick this show up and get out of here. But before we get out of here, we're gonna let everybody get their last outtake. After you get your last outtake, make sure you give all your handles and where they can go out and find you, reach you, whether they agree with you, whether they disagree with you, where they can follow you. So let's go ahead and let's give all all the handles. I'm gonna start with our most senior person here, Mr. Eric Moore.
Thank you, AJ. The name is Eric Moore. Hopefully you see it right here. Point to the right place, yes. And we're at anidan.com. You're more than welcome to come and visit. Probably one of the most popular parts of our site. We actually have 3 different sites. One is the regular news site where we steal stuff from Kenn Rashad and put it on our page. We have a gentleman by the name of Luke Williams that puts out a weekly newsletter called the Black College Sports Page. We have a fan forum that has been known to institute some high-level discussions where folks basically just give their opinion. And then during the college football season, we actually list each and every HBCU football game that has been scheduled. We expanded it to basketball this year and figured out how we could get the system to work. So you may find us also as a source for HBCU football and basketball. At Onidan, ONNIDAN. The Facebook is Onidan, and the website is onidan.com.
All right. And your last comment or thought, any subject, any sport?
Yes. Yes, that's what we try to cover. Any subject, any sport. Please support HBCUs. I know we've played. I'm not the only one that's going to say that, but these brothers that you're looking at work very hard to try to give you the best possible coverage of HBCUs. And many of the student athletes work very hard to put on a good performance. So the least you can do is support them. Buy season tickets. Don't buy just for homecoming. Get season tickets, and that will go a lot toward helping those programs develop and grow.
Mr. Harvey.
Thank you for having me on the roundtable this evening. So I finally made it. I finally became a knight, and so thank you guys for the privilege. I've enjoyed it. I'm not sure if I contributed enough, but if I've been invited again, I promise you that I'll have more input, more analysis on the questions of the day. You can follow me at Twitter at @HMichaelHarvey. My blog is haroldmichaelharvey.com. And of course, if you want to know more about me, there's the memoir, Freaknik Lawyer. In another age, I was a fire-breathing criminal defense lawyer. So this tells you the story about the Freaknik Lawyer. You can find it at haroldmichaelharvey.com. Thank you, guys.
And with that title, and living in Atlanta, you probably got a lot of people out of trouble at that thing called the Freaknik back in my day.
I did, all for free. Didn't collect a fee for it.
Oh,
my wife said I lost my mind.
Ken, I'm gonna go to you next.
Let me just start by saying this. My college-age son who attends Grambling right now is going to see this, and he's going to come to me and say, "Dad, what is Freaknik?" You know?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's already going to happen. So,
Freaknik Lawyer.
Yeah, right. You can follow HBCU Sports obviously on the web at hbcusports.com. We're located on Facebook. On Twitter at HBCU Sports, on Facebook at Real HBCU Sports, and on Instagram at HBCU_sports. And look, for those of you who don't know, we got all our ideas from Onidan. Okay, he laid the foundation, and we kind of followed his lead, plain and simple. So Eric and I, we talk all the time. We say we are competitors, but at the same time, we're also business associates as well, business partners. So, there are a lot of layers to this, but I'm honored to be on this today with these established gentlemen, and hopefully there will be more that I can be a part of and contribute in the very near future.
Right.
So I will quickly say that my outtake is really twofold. One, I got to give a shout out to Claflin softball for just the second time in school history. Claflin University softball is going to make an appearance in the NCAA Division II softball championships regional round with a record of 8-1. And it's like, you're like, what? 8-1? Yes, they're going in as a 6th seed, playing in the national tournament. And, so shout out to the ladies there of Claflin for look, I'm sure having to go through what every HBCU team had to go through, and you could tell by the fact that they only had 9 games. It was a shortened season, but they still overcame, and now they have an opportunity to compete for a national championship. And so much love and support to them, and I hope you'll kind of follow their journey this season. And then I also want to say, guess what's coming up Friday, guys? We are 100 days away from HBCU football. That's right. I did the math. I counted out from Saturday, day 0. Now, I don't know. I haven't checked onadin.com or onadin.com to see what the calendar looks like, but I believe that Saturday we've got Edward Waters and Florida Memorial. So Friday, May 21st, we are 100 days away from that game. And with everything going on in the country, my God, I'm almost in tears when I saw that we may actually have football returning. So just something to kind of stay safe. I know, I'm not going to go through it, but look, if you're vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you wear a mask, keep wearing masks, no matter what the rest of the public is doing. Be safe. Keep your head on the swivel.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands, yeah, so that we can have a football season and a packed stadiums. I don't know. Hopefully we have packed stadiums, but it could all return to normal in 100 days. So follow me at DRB365, and of course the Black College Sports Network at my BCSN1 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is where you can find us. Drew, I'll give it over to you.
All right. Obviously, I'm a member of the Black College Sports Network, also a member of the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association at BCSN Drew. That's BCSN DREW on Twitter. And Ken, I was messing with you earlier about having an update, but I get an update on my phone right as y'all were doing y'all outtake. So now my outtake is now a release. Go to blackcollege9s.com, and this is supposed to be dropping sometime between 8:15 and 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's going to be released about the inaugural HBCU World Series, where it's going to be held, and the format and everything surrounding it. So that's going to be on blackcollege9s.com. That will be released tonight. I got that directly from the guru of HBCU baseball, Mr. Michael Coker himself. So, I guess I'm the one with the scoop today, Ken, but go ahead and put it up on HBCUsports.com. Mr. Boyd, go ahead and put it up on onthedan.com because this show getting ready to go up on Black College on my BCSN.net. So just want to let y'all know.
Fair enough.
For the godfather of HBCU Sports Reporting, the author and the lawyer of HBCU Sports Reporting, the newsbreaker of HBCU Sports Reporting, and the voice of HBCU Sports, as I call him, Mr. Bryan Fulford. My name is AD Drew. I'm just a producer. So since I'm the producer, I'm going to end this stream. We will see y'all next week. We'll holler.
Take care.
Peace.